I got baptized and it was an incredible. The truth is this, as a person that has in the past taken many substances and always been disappointed with their inability to deliver the kind of tranquility and peace and even transcendence that I always felt I've been looking for, something occurred in the process of baptism that was...
Welcome to King Josiah TV, where this channel was created to educate, promote the kingdom of Jesus Christ in this world. I am your host, Josiah Hill. And before we get started on today's episode, I need you guys to do me a favor. Go ahead, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go and hit that follow button. And if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and give me that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
Watch giants fall like Goliath. David, I dance. This ain't no TikTok. God told me that my steps was ordered. Walking in flip-flops. Chris Rock, how they laughed at me.
Gentleman, Russell Brand. He was a gentleman that's been, he was like in the early like 2000s and things like that. He was big into like the rock party culture, believing in like different, mixing like multiple religions and things all together. All like the little signs and things that people wear on their chest and little I think that's the third eye and all that. He believed in all these sort of things, and recently he started out and he came out and he was pretty much a very much like radicalized person, like pretty much living a life of wrath unto God. And he recently came out and was like, I think this was like less than a month or two ago, he comes out and he goes, hey, I'm entertaining this odd thing, this Jesus thing, but he doesn't fully say he's a Christian. And then like less than what it was, I think it was like last week, I saw, he was getting baptized on Sunday and he's fully let go of these things. And this is just a beautiful story, guys. So we're going to dive into it. I just want to show his initial video that he posted on TikTok talking about his baptism. I think it was like 2-3 days before he got baptized, which I think he got baptized last Sunday. But let's get into this video, guys. Let him explain. I won't talk everything through. I'm gonna let him do the talking.
Experience, and many of you will have had your own experiences of baptism and will therefore know what I'm talking about. Many aspects of it were very intimate and personal. The truth is this, as a person that has in the past taken many substances and always been disappointed with their inability to deliver the kind of tranquility and peace and even transcendence that I always felt I've been looking for, something occurred in the process of baptism that was incredible, overwhelming, literally overwhelming, because I was obviously underwater and it was the River Thames at some points. So I felt changed, transitioned. Now, of course, even though it's been less than 24 hours, in the interim period, I've already felt like sort of irritation. I've got 3 children, I've got a job, I've got challenges, I still live in the world, but I feel as if some new resource within me has switched on. So many of your comments have been so beautiful and encouraging, and I really appreciate it. And also even the cynicism, I understand, because some people will just see me as a celebrity. I don't see me as a celebrity because I was me when I was a little boy. I was me when I was a junkie. I was me when I was poor. I've been me in all of the different phases. But I recognize that anything in this terrain, in the sort of social media world, could be exploited and utilized. For me, I've made the decision. And I know what the decision is. I've made it for myself, and I pray that it will be relevant to my family, in particular my children. My wife's Catholic, you know, she's already made her own choices in this life, including this one. This is new for me. I'm learning and I will make mistakes, but this is my path now. And I already feel incredibly blessed, relieved, nourished, held. It's been an incredible experience. I wish I could tell you exactly about it because there were amazing individuals involved. There were incredible and bizarre incidents that took place that felt serendipitous and laden. You know, I do a show every day. I'll be talking about this stuff in the show because it's part of my mission and it's part of my ministry and it's part of my service. This is new to me and it's a joy to me. And I know that I'm not expected to be perfect, and I know that that's not something I'll be able to deliver. Those of you that have embraced me, I'm so grateful. I can't tell you how happy I feel and how relieved I feel. But as you know, if you know, my resources are coming from somewhere else and someone else now. Thank you so much for your support. Let's keep doing this together, or certainly I'm just going to do what I'm doing. I love you so much. I'm so grateful to be surrendered in Christ. See you all soon. I'm doing the show a little later. Come watch.
That's beautiful, guys. I just
Yes,
got to start off by saying that is a beautiful story. Seeing him, I mean, he literally described, and that's a crazy thing, guys, that people that aren't saved, that haven't been like in the Christian community their entire life, when they really experience God, when they really go from death to life, which is what we do when we go under that water and our old life is dead and we arise as the new man or the new woman. He explains that, man. It's just, he said, there's a peace that comes over me. There's just like a covering that I can't fully explain. And it's something that, I mean, guys, this is something to rejoice over. And it's just crazy over these last few years. I think everybody's realized there's been a lot of celebrities, a lot of people that people would not expect to come to Christ have been coming to Christ. And the book of the Bible talks about that the most elect will fall away, and the people that we don't think are supposed to be in Christ and supposed to carry the mantle are starting to now be resurrected and are coming on, becoming almost the forefront. The most people that people would not think should be in that light, or people that should be acknowledged as that, are now being outspoken about the gospel. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And even every story, every story in the Bible that we know, and every apostle that we can think of, even like the Apostle Paul, which I greatly revere and look up to a lot. Anybody that you can think of, everybody that had their issues and their problems, and they were not good people. Mary, none of them were good people. These people were prostitutes. These people were killers, murderers. David, these people were not inherently what we would see today as somebody that's righteous or somebody that could be used for God's glory. But God always uses the most messed up, jacked up situations for his glory and to turn into something beautiful. But without further ado, he had an interview actually recently with another individual that has had like kind of a revelation of his own coming to Christ. And he interviewed him, and I just thought they spotlighted some good things. And I saw some other podcasters doing pretty much a review of it, so I wanted to pull it up here so we can review that. So just a second. So, guys, this is an interview with Jordan Peterson. As I mentioned, is somebody that's been recently, somebody that's been really dipping into his faith, and God has been sifting his heart. He's starting to become an outspoken Christian as well, even though he hasn't fully acknowledged it to my knowledge. But he's definitely somebody that I believe God is working and sifting even Jordan Peterson's heart. But let's go ahead and let this video play. He has some really great questions here, and this further describes his just recent getting into the faith and finding Christ and moving in this direction. But I'm going to let it play.
Well, so let me ask you something that's more personal than this is my observation, and you tell me if it's accurate. So you've talked about being spectacularly successful in the land of hedonistic whim, let's say, and you've discussed, well, you were kind of an icon for that, right? And a model for that even. And so,
and that's what I was describing earlier, guys. I was saying like his career at its height was like the early 90s, early 2000s. And that's what he's talking about. His lifestyle was something where it was completely opposite, opposed of anything Christian, gospel, God, anything. It was completely opposite, completely in the other direction. So that's what Jordan Peterson is saying. I mean, the way he would have said it, most people, if you didn't know him, they probably would have got a little offended the way he said heathenistic. I mean, not bad choice of words, but they know each other, so I don't think he took offense to it. But yeah.
You know, you're emblematic of that, of the success of that approach, but that didn't work for all sorts of reasons. And so it seemed to me that you wandered out of that landscape into a kind of amorphous mysticism, but that's become more targeted, and it's become more targeted in the Christian direction recently, particularly perhaps in the last year. Is all of that accurate?
Yes.
Is there any? Okay, that is accurate. Okay, so what do you make of the fact, and you talked about the rosary specifically just now, what do you make of the fact that that journey out in the desert of mysticism, let's say, is well, I think the same thing is happening to you in some ways that's happening to people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali and to Neil Ferguson. and to Douglas Murray and to Tom Holland, and also to Richard Dawkins, is that there's a recognition emerging that there's something in the midst of the mystic, let's say, down in the depths of the metaphysical, that speaks of something that's much more.
And he's speaking on exactly, guys, what I was talking about. Is that people that have been the furthest away from the truth, people that are the furthest away from the gospel now are realizing and come to the realization, and God is knocking on the heart. God says, I come and I knock on your heart. He's knocking at the door. He's a gentleman. And I think a lot of times that people take this path of these extremist things, like believing in all these other worldly things and books and teachings, and they try to do things to find things out outside of Christ. They actually redirect themselves back into Christ and finding him. And that's what he's talking about. And that's why I'm a strong believer that I believe that God is going to bring the people that we don't expect for him to bring into his kingdom. He's going to bring the people to him that we don't expect and we would think are rejects to the gospel, but they're actually God's most beloved.
Christian than any of us would have possibly imagined, let's say 15 years ago, or even a year ago for that matter. And I'm wondering how that's making itself manifest specifically in your life. Like, how is this mysticism that's obviously part of your nature, that was probably what was pulling you, at least in part, in the hedonistic direction to begin with? That was somewhat desire for communion with the spirit of Dionysius and Bacchus, like there's a call to self-transcendence in a kind of radical hedonism, that's for sure. And so it's just not the optimal ground, let's say. It might be better than rank cowardice, however. Yes. It was William Blake who said, wisdom through excess. And there's something to be said about that. And that's also echoed in the tale of the prodigal son, by the way. It's something to wander in the vast wastelands of the hedonistic world successfully and then come home. There's something to be celebrated in that, even though you're going to pay for your bloody sins. That's for sure.
There is.
Even though they may have been necessary and even desirable in some bizarre sense. So in your life at the moment, it looks to me like you've taken a Christian tilt. Like, what the hell do you make of that? And how do you know that that's just not another form of self-aggrandizing falsehood? Well, just when you think you've thrown the...
I like how he almost plays the devil's advocate here to him. I believe he's just going to bring a great talking point that I think a lot of times our faith in that respect should be tested. Our faith in that respect we should have these questions answered in our own heart and sifting out our own salvation.
The devil out.
There he is again, all dressed up.
Yeah.
But somewhere to go. Well, I see Joseph Campbell as a kind of a sort of deputy to Jung's principle. And I like how Campbell says, in the end, you might likely explore the native ideology and theology. Now, I know that's sort of somewhat fast and loose, given that I'm in Northern Europe and the Nazarene was hardly springing forth from Essex Greys on the Thames side.
Right. An important point to make. Western. It's like, not exactly.
Yes.
It's not Western at all.
How it has felt, almost as if something that felt so parochial and prosaic because of the, because of the delivery systems. It's ordinary, it's abundant, it's these grandmas at a bus stop, it's the drab intonations of a vicar in a parish, it's the apologetic Church of England, and I'm not attacking the Church of England, but where you feel that they might almost be afraid to mention God in there for fear of stepping on somebody's toes.
He's in the broom closet. He's underneath the mop. So, yes, definitely.
So because it felt so sort of, local, like this figure of Christ, what it's felt like is, it's you. He's always been there. He's always been there. There is something in this that is not as you obviously are exploring, as well as rather beautifully illuminating for us, there's something in these texts that is about inducing states. And as whenever ultimately a rational idea issued through language, in poetics, through poetics, when you induce a state beyond what is literally encoded, when you invite somehow that you reach beyond what is presented linguistically, it seemed to me somehow that in returning to this, in returning to the Bible, in returning to Christ, indeed, it does feel like a return, doesn't it? Rather than a novel discovery issued at the shore by a missionary who doesn't know whether he's going to get a pat on the back or a cauldron to swim in at high temperatures. It's felt to me like this has always been here. This has always been here. I'm, of course, enjoying C.S.
I mean, God has always been there. God has always been in our spirit. He's always there talking to us. He's always there trying to lead us and guide us in the right direction. I do believe that God is always trying to steer us in the right direction until the day of our death, which when our grace runs out. So that's why I think it's almost interesting, or that he brought up the fact of saying, I don't feel like it's a return. I don't feel like it's a new discovery. I feel like it's, it's something I've already been in, you know what I mean? Or something I already have knowledge of. And that's because God lives in us. God is always there. He's our Heavenly Father, always pointing us in the right direction. He says, even if you make your bed in hell, he said he's there with you.
Lewis's approach, because I am a product of cultural atheism, materialism, hedonism, and yes, a child as much of Jim Morrison as William Blake, of like that. This is about the Dionysian, the Bacchanalian. This is about empowerment, sex magic, the glory of it all, the abundant glory, throwing off the liminal and the limiting. And of course, then one arrives one day at the terrible conclusion that there's nothing there. And perhaps only then, indeed, that's why
Jim Morrison died, right, at 27, which seems to be the fate of many, many enthusiastic Bacchanalian geniuses.
For
really,
surely,
right?
for surely there must be a death. For surely there must be a death. Hopefully you don't have to kill the host. Hopefully the death is merely the idea. And what is offered, and one thing I feel, as you know from our previous conversations, that I have at least a kind of experiential authority to speak about, while not representative authority, is the impact of the 12 steps on the psyche of an addict, and its analysis in the ultimately that what addiction represents is a spiritual problem, is a spiritual quandary, and even embedded in the idioms like get off my face, lose myself, get smashed, is the idea that what the actual impulse is, and indeed think how significant the word craving is within addiction, is a move towards, a pulling, some force, some source, some calling, some clarion call, some harbinger, awaiting some personal rapture. The problem is, of course, living as we do in...
I think he's right about it. I mean, the way he talks, I like his enthusiasm and things, but and he's right. I don't want to speak on that. When it comes to like addiction and it comes to things like that, it's always spiritual. It's always something that is deeper than just the want and the desire to do something. There's a spiritual battle going on there. There's something deeper than what you think you're addicted to, whether it be the bottle, whether it be some drugs or alcohol, or whatever the case may be. It's deeper than that. Sex addiction is deeper than the addiction. It's spiritual.
The context that ultimately offers you as the end goal through materialist and rational analysis, that you might become just this type of a person in this type of a society. Something important is lost, and those things are explicit in the texts that undergird 12-step practice and philosophy. It is plain that they are talking primarily about, and I've said to you before, but I'll say again, that Jung was a key influence on the founders of that movement, curiously, along with first century Christianity. That what they are not saying, give up drinking, give up drugs. They are saying, give up self, give up self. Give up self. Yeah. There are phrases like abandon yourself to God completely.
And what does God say? God says, leave your life, die to yourself every day, and pick up your cross and follow me. I mean, he's hitting all the nails right on the point. That's what the gospel is talking about. It's talking about dying to yourself, dying to your own wants and desires, and not so you can lose, but so you can gain. Because every time we chase after our own desires that we want in life, the things that we want to chase after, things that we want in life, we also ultimately end in destruction. And then if we follow God's ways, which seem initially like we're giving things up, like we're not being our full self, we actually walk into more life. We walk into more freedom.
Salvation on me like it's a helmet. The way you to sin is death for send you to hell quick. Wanted to be all about me, God, I was selfish. I was rebellious.